We are dealing with the 3rd century AD. And in that connection, we are dealing with the two major philosophical / religious movements that were affecting culture generally, pagan culture and Christian culture, and were also affecting and shaping the thought of Augustin, who we are going to get to. We'll actually start probably a little bit of Augustin tomorrow, but I will not test you on Augustin. By the way, fair game for the test set Friday is the material I'm covering today. This reading that you did, I know you understood it. It was scintillating. I know you were amazed at the help that it gave you in understanding the nature of faith. That is fair game for the test. You want me to explain it to you?
Well, perhaps we should take a few minutes just to
digest it?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I just want you to get it. Don't kill yourself over it. I just want you to know fundamentally what's it about. You don't need to get all the details of it. I know it has a little bit of challenge to it, but you can get the basic idea. Yes?
How about instead of a couple minutes of digesting it, a couple minutes of trying to understand it?
No, you read it. You guys saw. Well, yesterday you were all done by the end of the period. You were having fun throwing paper airplanes. I knew you got it because I could tell. The indicia of the classroom told me clearly that you had all mastered it, because I felt such a relaxed attitude in the class by the end of the period. So anyway, I will explain it to you, but not before the test. I want this to be a reading comprehension exercise, so just get the best out of it you can. Anyway, fair game for the test Friday will be the discussion today of what's called Neoplatonism, and of course what we covered earlier, Manichaeanism, or Manichaeism. I will not test you on anything about Augustine himself, except maybe a little thought question from this reading. So you should have an idea. Oh, I will say this about the reading. He is responding to somebody who apparently is posing questions about or otherwise being influenced by the Manichaeans. And so the entire purpose of this writing is to establish that true understanding always proceeds, in a sense, by faith. I believe in order to understand is sort of the motto of Augustine. And he's trying to argue in this piece, I shouldn't tell you this much, I'm making your job way too easy, that really everything you know to some degree depends on the premise of faith. The Manichaeans viewed themselves as rationalists. You should only believe that which you can prove. And so they were naturalists in a sense. They were dualists, but they were really committed to the idea that, only reason gives you things that you should believe. And Augustine wants to argue, no, in some ways, faith is necessary in order to understand anything. And we'll talk more about Augustine's view of faith later, but just at least have that much in mind. It'll help you. So that's one of the influences. The other one is the Neoplatonism. The guy usually associated with Neoplatonism, the name is the name of, anybody know this? Who's the most famous name? The founder of Neoplatonism. And his name is, anybody? No takers? You ever heard of Plotinus? Ever heard of that name? All right, now you have. Plotinus is your guy. Plotinus was a contemporary of Mani. Plotinus lived from 205 to 270. They were both third century pagans. Neither of them claimed to be Christian. Both of them, however, claimed to make a place for Christianity. both of them thought they could accommodate Christianity. So they are both syncretistic in that sense. Mani wants to say that Christ was one among many. He was up there with Buddha, and Zoroaster and so on. That was Mani's approach. Plotinus is actually giving what amounts to a conscious alternative to the Christian faith. He wants to say, the Christians are onto something, but I have something better. And so he's giving this is an attempt really to improve, you might say, on the Christian faith. Plotinus is a true Gnostic, so he would be one of the most clear-cut examples of Gnosticism that you'll find along the way. A conversation here? No. And so whenever you think of Gnosticism, usually people will think of Plotinus as one of the most important. All right. I don't want to talk about his life. His life is boring. Who cares? But I do want to talk about his thought. So the thought of Plotinus is really what's before us here. And again, as we've done before, I want to do this in terms of certain themes or talking points. These are the things you want to know about Neoplatonism in general, Plotinus in particular. And it'll be important to get this because when we talk about Augustin, I'm going to refer back to this. So even though now it may not seem like it's all that important, but it becomes very important when we try to digest Augustin. He is, first of all, an idealistic monist. Now you are conversant enough with the jargon of philosophy that you can probably tell me without much effort, what would an idealistic monist be? Matthew, what just pops to your mind based on your familiarity with the jargon of philosophy? An idealistic monist would be what?
I can't remember what monist means. Does it mean like God's in everything?
In a sense, that's right. That's good. Anything else you want to say about that? What is an idealist, first of all? How do we use that term?
Well, there's Plato's ideal world.
That's right. And so an idealist.
Someone who believes that there's an ideal world.
Okay, that's pretty good. He believes, well, let's go with that. He believes that there's some kind of level of transcendent reality, the ideal. And then the monist part would be what?
God is in everything. Yeah, we can find God in all creation.
Okay, that's pretty good. That in a sense, everything is resolvable to one fundamental substance. He's a monist. A dualist would say, like the Manichaeans, there's a conflict. There's great good, there's great evil, they're at war. A monist is the opposite of a dualist. A monist says there's one fundamental reality. So you put it together, there's a transcendent level, the ideal, and yet somehow that ideal is found in everything else. So Matthew, that's not bad. It's a pretty good shot, just based on that phrase alone. He follows the emanation idea. Everything emanates from this fundamental reality. So far, he hasn't said anything that we haven't seen before. This is all more or less comparable to ideas we've seen before. The second little talking point is that evil equals unreality. We've seen that before. The Manichaeans said that evil is a separate reality. Against the good, the two are in conflict. Eternal conflict. Plotinus says evil is not real. But evil is simply that which you find as you move farther from that fundamental transcendent reality that we would call God. He doesn't call it God, but we would call it God. Okay, and that brings us to the third and most important talking point, which has several subpoints to it, and this is his cosmology. Plotinus begins with the notion of a singular, core, ultimate reality that he calls the One. The One is ineffable. I-N-E-F-F-A-B-L-E. New word? Who knows the word ineffable? You know that word, Spencer?
I've heard it, but I have no idea.
Okay, you've heard it. That's good. To start, anybody else heard the word ineffable? All right, good. Anybody want to take a stab at it? Ineffable. Sydney?
Does it sort of mean infallible?
Not exactly. Good thought. All right, learn it now. You're responsible for this word from here on in for the rest of your lives. Ineffable means incapable of being described. Incapable of being described. You know that many times we describe experiences in life by using the term like. Now, I don't mean like the way teenagers use the word like. You know what like I mean? You with me? You know, I don't mean that. I mean comparing one thing to another. So, Trevor goes off to Disney World. He comes back. We walk up to him, grab him by the collar and say, "Hey man, what was it like?" Right? You ever said something like that? And of course what we mean is, can you draw parallels, can you draw analogies between that experience that you had there and anything that I've experienced in my life? What is it like to which I can relate is the sense of the question. What was it like to go to Disney World? What was it like? What was it like, to eat 3 pounds of cotton candy? What was it like? Something like that. You are asking the question, and the question is, can you draw comparisons between this experience that you've had that I have not had and anything to which I can relate in my own set of experiences? That's implied in the question, what was it like? Whenever you say, what is the One like? The answer is, there is no answer. It is not like anything. There is no analogy that can be drawn. There's no comparison you can make. The One is ineffable, indescribable, utterly transcendent and beyond any human experience. And any time in life you have anything going on where you say this, just can't describe it. If you want to impress people, you could say it was really ineffable. You can just throw that word in there and people will be impressed, But this is the way that it is properly used to describe something that is so foreign, so completely outside the scope of ordinary human experience that you just simply say it's ineffable. And so, Plotinus does a whole lot with this. And he writes paragraphs. It's really amazing, almost funny. Plotinus is, by the way, a very brilliant guy. I don't want you to underestimate him. He writes whole paragraphs about the things you cannot say about the One. He's not this, he's not that. He's not this, he's not in motion, he's not at rest. He's not being, he's not non-being. He's not this, it goes on and on. He's not intelligence, he's not non-intelligence. He's not person, he's not non-person. Blah, blah, blah. He goes through line after line, paragraph after paragraph, all the stuff you cannot say about the One. And he develops what came to be called in theology the way of negation, which in Latin is what? Anybody know the phrase? It would be called the way of negation. It would be the takers? I think I probably gave it to you somewhere along the way.
Yes. Via negativa.
Okay, very good. Sometimes that would be one way of putting it, via negativa, or the via negationis. Via negationis sounded out. I butchered the last part of the word, but I usually do, you know. When in doubt, scribble and all that. So the via negationis. The way of negation. And I just want you to appreciate that even though Plotinus is no Christian, and is many times not viewed as much of a friend of Christianity, this was viewed as very serviceable in the development of theology. That we do our theology partly by saying things about God, and partly by saying the things that we cannot say about God. And in many ways, theology is as much a matter of denying things as of affirming things. The doctrine of the Trinity, in many ways, is not simply an affirmative statement, but a negative statement. God is not this, he's not that, you know. The Council of Chalcedon, via negationis. Christ is one nature, he's two natures, one person, right? Without mixture, confusion, separation, division. That's, negating. And so, in a sense, even though we don't like Plotinus a whole lot, we feel like he helped us. Now, he went over the top because he wound up saying, there's nothing you can say about God. Everything is a negation. All right, so that's the one. Out of the one comes the second level. And I don't know, the way I saw this picture once, and I'm not sure I could do it, but it's sort of like an umbrella. This is more difficult than it looks. Isn't that cute? Now, an umbrella has little spines when you open it up, and that's what these are. And these little points out here, those little points are part of what Plotinus calls the Noose, N-O-U-S, Noose. So we start with the one, that's the highest level. And then the second level is Noose. What is the meaning of the Greek word nous? Sarah, it is? Mind. The nous is, according to Plotinus, God thinking. Now, I'm not sure how he gets away with that, because he's already told us there's nothing we can say about God. But he sneaks this one in the back door. The nous is God thinking. And Plotinus locates here in God's thoughts what we otherwise know of as Plato's ideal world. So the idea that we have of a perfect circle, the idea that we have of a perfect equilateral triangle, the idea we have of absolute beauty, all of those things that we've already discussed earlier in connection with Plato, those ideas that somehow we have an intuition of, are actually the thoughts of God. God is the one who's thinking those things. And each of these little points that I've put on my umbrella, each of those is a human mind. So each of us in this room is a little part of the nous. That's why you can think about a perfect circle. To our knowledge, dogs don't think about perfect circles. Dogs don't reflect on absolute beauty. That's something that's somehow in the mind of a human being. So notice here, this is where, as Matt was telling us, the monism comes from. It's not simply that our minds are aware. In a sense, our minds are the nous, right? God is greater than our mind, but in a sense, God thinking is God thinking in and through All of these human minds. It puts humanity in a very strategic place in Plotinus' cosmology. Now I want you to get this. This may seem just kind of weird, strange, but please get it, because Augustin uses this. And this becomes extremely important in Christian history, more than you might guess, even though the idea seems to come from a pagan here. But we have this notion that the Noose is composed of all of these little points in the human mind. All right, the next level is what Plotinus calls the Psyche. The Psyche. And that word means what? Mr. Fugit, what's the meaning of the word Psyche? Psyche, like psychology, psychoanalysis, psychotic. No, go ahead, please.
The
Psycho. Great movie. Psychic.
Is it something, I'm taking a shot in the dark here, is it the connection with another world?
Yeah.
Things?
Nice try. Good job. Yeah. It's a simpler meaning then. What does the Greek word psyche means? Ben, you know this. You're a Greek scholar. Greek word psyche. Psyche.
Well, I don't know what it means, but isn't it kind of like a connection between people's minds?
Well, it could be, but not. It's a simpler meaning than. Anybody know? It's just a word for soul. Was that? What were you going to say, Nicole?
I was just going to say that subconscious.
Okay, no, that'd be more Freudian than we want to get here. So if we put little definitions, we'll say the one is God, the Noose is mind, and the Psyche is soul. And what Plotinus means by psyche, what he means here by soul, is your ability to think, to reason. And what I want you to get here, it's a bit of a subtle point, but you can do this. Your ability to reason, your ability to think about things like, causation, the law of non-contradiction, your ability to put things in classes, to say this belongs in the class of that, this belongs in the class of markers. Your ability to do that classification discipline that Aristotle engages in. Your ability to do that requires that you already have Plato's ideas in your head. This is where Aristotle got it wrong, according to Plotinus, and according to, people in the Platonic tradition generally. Aristotle said, please get this, please work on this. Turn your brains on. Running now. Aristotle said, I go through life and I notice that things are similar. I see, I don't have two markers, but I have two erasers. I notice that these two objects are quite distinct from each other. This one is sort of like made of, foam rubber or something, and this one's got plastic and so on. But I look at these and I successfully put them in the same class, right? I say both are erasers, even though they are not quite the same. I look at two chairs. One is cushy, like the one sitting back there that happily nobody is sitting in right now. And others are these hard, bumpy things that are intended to keep you awake because they're basically not comfortable. And yet I put both of them together in the same class, don't I? I say they're both chairs. Aristotle tells me the reason I do that is because I notice the similarity. Right? That's Aristotle's scientific method. But do you see that I still have to have in my head a prior idea of similarity itself? I have to have in my mind an idea of similarity and difference, of class, of set, in other words, there's already something in my mind that must be present before I can do what Aristotle tells me I do to make sense out of the universe. Plato says to Aristotle, you could not classify things but for an idea of class itself. Sort of like you couldn't you couldn't call any particular thing like a circle unless you already had the notion of circleness in your mind. You see, Plato still says, Aristotle, you can't do your work without my ideal world somehow working there. And that's what Plotinus is saying. Do you follow this? Spencer, go ahead.
I was just asking if Plato said this or Plotinus said this.
Well, I'm speaking a little I'm speaking for Plato against Aristotle when I say this.
Okay.
This would be Plato's response. It is, in fact, Plotinus' response to the Aristotelian.
Okay.
But it has also been, I might just say, a kind of Christian perspective. How come I can reason? How come even a pagan who doesn't trust Jesus, isn't saved, isn't regenerate, isn't going to... How come even a pagan can do the Pythagorean theorem? How come? And the answer from the Christian point of view has been because even that person is somehow enlightened by an idea that was given to him by God. That person's rationality is a gift of God. That may be the meaning of John's Gospel when it says he enlightens every man who comes into the world. Not every Christian man, every man. He is the light of the world. Reason itself comes somehow from God and from the creation that comes through Christ, you see. And so even though Plotinus, again, is not, we don't view him as one of our great saints or anything, he may be onto something. He says, my ability to reason is only possible because I have this ability to think God's thoughts. The problem in Plotinus is that the reason I think God's thoughts is because I'm a little piece of God. The Christian doesn't go that far. I don't think God's thoughts because I am God. But nevertheless, I do have that ability to somehow think the thoughts of God. And that's Plato's ideal world. Next level in Plotinus is what he calls the physis. The physis. This would be the word from which, and actually, the true Greek letter, I actually wrote it originally, and maybe I should keep it there. It'd be P-H-Y-S-I-S, which you might pronounce something like physis or something, but it's pronounced physis. And it's just because of the ambiguity of the Greek letter. But this is the word from which we get words like physical, like physical education or something like that. This word, Greek word simply means nature. And Plotinus ties it to emotion. So this is the unreasoning part of your human experience. Emotion is not exactly a reasonable thing. You don't get up in the morning and go through a rational process and think, well, today it makes sense for me to be slightly bored. So that's what I'm going to do today because that's reasonable, that's rational, If you're happy, if you're sad, if you're melancholy, if you're ecstatic, if you're whatever emotions you may be feeling. In this room we got a variety of emotions right now, I assume, But none of those emotions were arrived at the end of a syllogism. See, there we have a very good, I like that emotion, But that's not reasonable. It's not, doesn't mean you're unreasonable. It just means that emotion somehow floats at a different level in human experience than the exercise of rationality. He doesn't deny that that's important. He also notices that you can see the same thing in animals. And so he calls this, in a sense, the animal soul, or the animal side of us. We do have a kind of animal side to our existence. I can get a dog excited. I can throw the frisbee and jump up and down and do a bunch of things and get a dog kind of juiced up, you know. And I could do the same thing with you, couldn't I? I could start singing, "Breaking up is hard to do," you know. That's from Mr. Williams. And you might say to yourself, what Mr. Gore is doing right now is not very reasonable, but it's making me feel certain emotions. Now, who knows what those emotions are? I won't try to go there. Needless to say, I'm not going to quit my day job, start making records, but... or... What's that? I could, yeah. Yeah, I could. Some people are wishing I would. But that is something distinct from rationality. And so that's that level. Then the next level down is what he calls matter. So matter is just pure material. That's concrete and mortar, you know, so on. And then finally, the last one down is non-being. Now, you'll see here that this does have some similarity to what we've talked about otherwise. The emanation idea is at work. You see this, you know, clearly enough. But Plotinus has brought a new level of sophistication to it. And in particular, what he's bringing out that we should appreciate is this idea that in a sense, our ability to function, our ability to reason, our ability to do that which is distinctively human is only possible because we have some connection somehow with this higher order of reality. And that if we didn't have that connection, we would not be able to even have a class like this, in which I'm giving you a lecture, in which you are sitting there acting like you're paying attention, you know. I wouldn't be able to do this exercise except for this ability we all have to tap into something above all of us, a level of reason, a level of rationality, that is really what Plato was playing with in his world of the ideal. This is what Plato was after. And we all sort of share it in common. You know. And so we can hopefully have some common ground as we discuss things because we all share this higher transcendent level of ideals. And that was really what Plotinus developed, and Augustin was very impressed with that. And he incorporated that into his epistemology. And so we'll come back to this and kind of talk about it in that connection. Next talking point here in Plotinus is his anthropology. What is anthropology? What is that, Josiah? Anthropology is?
It's the study of man.
All right, and what do you think now? You know enough to answer this question, Josiah. What do you think would be the heart of the anthropology of Plotinus based on everything we've said here? What conclusion might you at least guess Plotinus would draw from all of that?
Are you asking which?
What is his analysis of the nature of humanity?
Okay.
It's the question of what is the nature of man? And I think you know enough to answer the question based on what we've already said here in terms of his cosmology. His cosmology leads to his anthropology. What do you suppose?
Well, I'd say that you would think that he's not a naturalist because he believes that there's a soul.
Not at all, that's right.
And there's a mind. So I think you might even say that there's some type of divine aspect about him.
There is, that's right.
And that
Can you take any other steps in that reasoning?
I'm kind of trying to go back to the thesis idea that maybe that's the bad part of us.
The fuses?
Yeah.
Now, it's in so far as it's closer to non-being, yeah. But remember, for him, evil is not really real, so he doesn't worry too much about that. You're on the right track. Anybody want to help out here? What do you suppose would be Plotinus' anthropology? Go ahead. Megan?
Well, you said we have God in us.
Yes,
So would you say we're all gods?
in a sense, he would say that. So a little bit more than that. That's true. Anybody else take a stab at this? Come on. I'm looking for genius here. Come on. Sydney, what do you think? What would be his anthropology? What is the nature of man? That's the question. What is the nature of man?
I don't know what else would be except that we all have a little bit of God.
Okay. Krista?
The mind is the most important part of us.
Okay, that's part of it. Nicole?
Well, I was thinking that if we have God in us and you can't describe God, then how can you describe real life?
That's okay. That's true. We have a little of God in us. What else do we have in us? What do we have in us? Go ahead.
We have man in us.
We have man in us. And what is man? Go ahead, Trevor. You got to think like a philosopher here.
Well, I was gonna say that we also have a little bit of animal in us.
We do.
Too. So I was
And
gonna
so-
say, that basically anthropology is the study through 2 through 4.
All right. Okay. That's close enough.
And, you know.
All right. That's close enough. That's pretty good. So here's the word I want you to know. And Trevor gets the gold cigar here for, you know.
Wait, can you light?
Light it up, not the gold cigar. No, you don't. And it's just a fig Newton. Don't too excited. All right, we are here's the word, microcosm. You know that word?
Thanks, Trevor.
What is a microcosm? It's a term you've all heard. What is it? Jacob, what is a microcosm? What does that word mean?
It's something small or smaller that
Mhm.
kind of reflects the overall principles of something that's much bigger.
That's right. And so in what sense is humanity microcosmic of the cosmology in Plotinus? I mean, you basically said it, so now say it again in connection with Plotinus here.
I would guess that all of these, that man has all these kind of aspects in the being.
Okay, that's it. Y'all get that? Get that, Spencer?
Yeah.
A little side conversation here.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, okay. Everything from the one on the one hand to the non-being on the other, you will find in man. Man is a microcosm of all of that. It's all in you. God is in you. Noose is in you. Psyche is in you. Fuses is in you. You are material. If I shoot you and come back in 6 weeks, I'm going to find dirt, or at least something like that. Sorry, I won't do that, Sarah. I'm just speaking, you know. Sort of. There's even non-being in you. You see, we are a combination of all these things. And that is the method by which he feels like he's gotten the right answer. He thinks he's discovered the right answer in large part by a correct examination of himself and of others. You know, that's been his laboratory. Next talking point is salvation. How are you saved? And for Plotinus, salvation is decidedly a mystical process. In the history of thought, there have been two flavors of mysticism. They're sometimes called ontological mysticism and epistemological mysticism. All right? Anybody want to take a stab at the difference, Laura? Nobody wants to, including Laura? What would be the difference between ontological mysticism and epistemological mysticism? Laura, what do you think? Go ahead. You know those words. You know all those words. Put it together.
Epistemological mysticism has to do more with how we get our knowledge, and then ontological would be figuring out what is reality.
You're on the right track. What is mysticism? What does that term mean? Trevor, what is mysticism? What would you call it? What is that? How would you describe mysticism?
I would describe it as something that you can't know very well. Like,
Well, that would be something that's mystical.
yeah.
So what is mysticism? What is that then? You're
That
that's
you
right
can't
track.
really know or the belief that you can't really know something.
Okay, all right. The idea, what is a mystic? You ever met anyone that you thought was kind of like a mystic? Sarah, what would that person be like? Have you met someone? Maybe you are one, I don't know. What is a mystic?
I don't really know, but it
You know the term. Don't you?
kind of, I don't know how to explain it, just not of this world.
Not of
more
this world, yeah.
Out, yeah,
Kind of out there.
yes.
You meet somebody and they're just sort of like weird, you know, just kind of strange. And you might say of such a person, they're really mystical. It's like they just are operating in a different universe. All right, well, mysticism in the history of the church has had a very important role to play. The medieval mystics, you'll hear of them. And so what do you suppose if you're a Christian and a mystic, what is your mystical discipline trying to achieve? Okay? Mystics tend to be very disciplined. They tend to go through these rigorous processes of reflection and meditation and so on. What are they trying to accomplish? What's going on, Joe? You're a Christian mystic. What are you trying to accomplish?
Well, you're probably trying to come up with some kind of outlandish ontology for things.
Yeah, maybe, could be. Avery, if you're a Christian mystic, what are you trying to? What are you doing? What are you trying to achieve?
As a Christian mystic, you're...
I mean, you got these people in the Middle Ages that devoted their lives to mystical disciplines. Hours of prayer, meditation, reflection, chanting things, going... What are they trying to do? What's all that all about? I mean, it's just killing time?
They're trying to reach the spiritual realm.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
And they want to reach it epistemologically so they can know it. That's what epistemology is, right? What's the difference between an epistemological mystic and an ontological mystic? Stephen? A Christian mystic would typically be epistemological. What's the most famous religion in the world that would represent ontological mysticism?
Would that be like the Hindu /
Sure.
Buddhist being one with the earth?
That's, well, could be. And so what is the mystic in the Hindu tradition trying to achieve? What's their ultimate objective? Just to know God? To what?
Probably not to know God. 'Cause
More than that.
Yeah. They
What?
want to know.
Spencer?
They want
They want
to become
to become God. So here it's the old drop in the ocean deal, right? Here's the ocean. Here's Spencer. He's a drop. Spencer drops into the ocean. 3 seconds later, can we find Spencer anymore? No. He's been mixed in. He's become. That's ontological mysticism. That's you lose yourself in this greater reality. Christian mystics have never gone that far and remain Christians. I mean, maybe they become Buddhists or something, but not Christians. Well, Plotinus is an ontological mystic. He wants you to engage in this salvation process in an upward quest to actually lose yourself ultimately in the one. To lose your identity. That's why it's important for him that you don't simply know the mind of God, that in some sense or other you are the mind of God. And that ultimately the quest that you have as a human being is to be merged into that God, that mind. Which, to be honest with you, sounds to me like... I mean, I've always found it a little bit appealing to still know a million years from now in eternity who I am and who Krista is and who you guys are, you know. That we're going to be looking back on this class period in eternity and you're going to be saying, you know, Gore, that really wasn't that bad a lecture. I don't know why we were misbehaving the whole class, you know. I've always thought it would be nice to have that sort of anticipation, but to lose myself in God and just cease to be who I am, just kind of become ocean. I don't know, does that, I get kind of nonplussed by that. But anyway, that's what Plotinus was about. He was about losing yourself in that. So his salvation was clearly a sort of mystical approach. Last thing, for him, creation. The creation of this God is involuntary and automatic. That's the Greek in him. We've already seen this before. It's part of what Sibelius was saying. Sibelius, by the way, was heavily influenced by Neoplatonism. Some people would say he was Neoplatonic. But I just wanted to give this to you at this point because we need to have it in view to get ready for Augustin. All right. Now you have Manichaeism under control. You have Neoplatonism under control. Right? Spencer, you got 30 seconds.
C.S. Lewis was a Neoplatonist, right?
Neoplatonism is a word that can be used broadly or narrowly.
So
when I use it, I'm using the narrow sense. This is the original Neoplatonism in history.
But
many people are called Neoplatonic, and C.S. Lewis is one of them.
Okay.
But they don't mean Neoplatonic as in a follower of Plotinus. They mean Neoplatonic as in you see Platonic influences in their thought, which you certainly do in C.S. Lewis.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you so much.